It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This episode is brought to you by ESPN+. The final chapter in the rivalry between Dustin Poirier and Conor McGregor will be written on July 10th at UFC 264, which is exclusively available to ESPN Plus subscribers for $69.99. Visit espnplus.com/Spotify.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things on the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's Friday, April 9th. And while we couldn't get Jenna Harner, we could get our man, Tony Serino. He's back. We're going to talk about what Juju said on the radio yesterday because he gave us a little bit of insight and some interesting things to talk about there. Then it's back to the topic bag, and we got a question about Ben Roethlisberger. You'll get me and Tony answering that question. And then finally, with Giovanni Bernard being cut by the Bengals, it begs the question, should the Steelers sign a free agent running back after the draft? Tony and I will explore that in the third segment. You can subscribe to the Locked On Steelers podcast on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Odyssey. Remember to rate us 5 stars with a positive comment, and you get a shout out at the end of the show. Let's get into it. You know, normally we get Jenna Harner on our Friday episodes. Unfortunately, we couldn't. She was pretty busy with the Pirates playing and the Penguins playing and all the Pittsburgh teams playing. But we did get our guy. I told you all week we were going to get him back. And we did. Because it's time for a Tony Friday. Because Tony Serino's here. What's up,
Woo! Tony? Playing through injury this week. Happy to be here, Chris. Happy to be back. I'm ready to talk some Steelers.
Let's do it, man. You played through injury just like Juju played through injury all last season with that busted up knee, and he's our first topic of the day. Now, why are we talking about Juju? Well, he was in the news again yesterday because he was on Michael Irvin's podcast, and I wrote about this on DKPittsburghSports.com. If you want to just read it and get all the direct quotes, you can go there. It's actually a free article. I've also posted a link to it into the Locked On Steelers Facebook group, which you can join at any point in time. It's 1,400 fans strong now. But Tony, really interesting stuff here. And he talked about a few things. Like he talked about how him and AB don't even have contact anymore, and how he's been blocked by AB on all forms of social media, and he can't even call him.
Yeah.
But I thought the most interesting two things here were, one, when he was asked about his TikTok dancing logo stuff, Juju Smith-Schuster was like, the team supported me throughout all of it.
Yeah, and it's not, it shouldn't be surprising, right? Because this was all a quote unquote distraction for everything outside of Pittsburgh. I think, to the players themselves, to Tomlin, right? I mean, when he would talk about this in his press conferences, it was a non-issue. It eventually became an issue, but really it became an issue after they lost to Cincinnati, right? And that was a catastrophic loss in the season. And then Tomlin said, okay, well, I'm going to talk to him about it. But really, you cannot draw a straight line between the performance the Steelers had against the Bengals and Juju's TikTok dancing. So no, I wasn't surprised to see that. In fact, I'm happy to see it. And again, it goes to this idea that, the fact that Pittsburgh didn't want him back, or the fan base tournament, none of that is true, right? Juju's still beloved, certainly by the locker room and by the fan base, regardless of all the extracurricular crap that happened. The Browns are the Browns and the TikTok dancing and all that. None of that mattered.
I agree. And we said at the time, Tony, I mean, you and I, we're very much guys that we look at what's happening on the field. He wasn't the problem. You look at the problems the Steelers had. Ben Roethlisberger wasn't seeing the field right. He just wasn't. And injuries became a problem for the defense. And then the flow of the team kind of got messed up late in the season. You saw the impact of them not having a bye week. I think people that try to make it about Juju's TikTok dancing or his comments in the media, I think that was way too much. Because again, Juju, we're acting. We talk about Juju like he's Antonio Brown or LeGarrette Blount. Getting into trouble, or Le'Veon Bell getting suspended because he's on marijuana, or Martavis Bryant. He's none of those. He's not. He if you want to say he's a distraction, fine. But and he even says in this, he's like, I stopped afterwards because I feared I'd be too much of a distraction. But he said he went before he stopped. He even went to Vince Williams and Cam Hayward and leaders on the teams and said, hey, do you guys want me to stop? And they said, no, we want you to be you, and don't stop being you for nobody. And it's not a problem. So I thought that was very interesting. But he also said, like, hey, that kind of played into him deciding to come back, which he verified or at least doubled down on, that the Chiefs and the Ravens were in hot pursuit. He talked about how Lamar Jackson was calling him up, his former receivers coach from USC and former Steelers quarterback T. Martin. He was a Ravens receivers coach. He reached out. John Harbaugh reached out. Marlon Humphrey reached out, which we saw on Twitter. Then he brought up how Andy Reid was sending him pictures of the Lombardi Trophy they won 2 years ago and bombarding with it. It's obvious that these teams actually were in play, despite what some people would lead you to believe.
Yeah, no, it is still crazy to me that he didn't take the Kansas City offer.
I still don't understand it.
Yeah, because look, every Steeler fan listening to this, we're all happy he's back, but none of us think the Steelers are better right now on paper than the Kansas City Chiefs are, right? That there's a better chance that Pittsburgh's going to be playing in the Super Bowl than Kansas City's, especially if you were to add Juju Smith-Schuster to that roster. And for a player like Juju, who knows he needs to put up big numbers and he needs to, he needs to do well this year if he wants to cash in 2022, why not go play with Patrick Mahomes? But he turns down the money. And he comes back, and he also talks about how important Ben Roethlisberger was to that decision. Yes. And I think what's interesting there, and we also heard, it was Matthew Judon went on a podcast a couple weeks ago and talked about Ben Roethlisberger and what he saw from him. Mm-hmm. And you hear these players talk, and there's a lot of people saying, Ben's done, right? This is an idiotic decision for him to come back. I think Juju plays in. Juju doesn't buy into that. Juju, player on the field who has the option to go play with Patrick Mahomes, says, no, I will take less money and I'll go play with Ben Roethlisberger. Now, not to say that Juju thinks Ben is better than Patrick Mahomes, but he does not think that Ben's this kind of washed up player, doesn't have it anymore, who cannot win football games. That is not a Juju's assessment of Ben Roethlisberger, and he's out there playing with him, every day. So
I agree. That's 100% what I think feeds into it, and it's funny, that's going to play into that tail end of that conversation is going to play into our next topic. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to open up our topic bag because we had a question that was specifically asked to you, Tony. We'll get into what that question was right after this. BetOnline.ag, the only place that we trust here in the Locked On Podcast Network to place bets on. Even though football season's over, there's a ton of different ways to make money by gambling on sports right now. If you go to betonline.ag today and sign up for your free account, you'll get a 50% bonus to your first deposit simply by entering the promo code Locked On. That's LOCKEDON, Locked On, all capital letters and all one word. And that will get you your 50% bonus on your first deposit. Right now, sure, the NFL is done, but you can put money down on where certain free agents might be going in the NFL. You can also bet on college basketball, the NBA, and the NHL. All different ways to get off the sidelines and get in on the action. BetOnline.ag. Remember, use that promo code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, Locked On, all capital letters, all one words, to get a 50% bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline.ag, your online sportsbook experts.
Yeah, you're making sports bets, but are you making winning sports bets? To win consistently, you need an edge, research, analytics. It's a lot. Or you could let BetQL do the work for you. Every game, every potential bet, from winners and losers to all the sides and totals, line movement, player props, and more. All backed by BetQL's proven data and analytics. BetQL analyzes over 350,000 unique bets every year and rates each potential bet on a scale of 1 to 5 stars. A 5-star is definitely a smart bet. 1 star, smart money is staying away. BetQL even lets you sort all of today's games with the best options listed right there at the top of your screen. BetQL gives you access to the same information the pros use. The stuff the sportsbooks don't want you to see. It's time to bet smarter and beat the books with BetQL. Visit BetQL.com today and use promo code PODCAST for 20% off. That's 20% off with promo code PODCAST at BetQL.com.
back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, here with Tony Serino for a Tony Friday. Just switching it up there, of course. Now, we're going into the topic bag segment, which if this is something we introduced this week that we're going to try to do more and more in the off season. Topic bag is your chance as a listener to get your question on the show. If you want your question submitted, just send an email to LOSteelersTopicBag@gmail.com. Again, that's LO for Locked On Steelers topicbag@gmail.com. Just make sure you put your name and put your question in there, and it will be in the cycle of things to eventually be answered on the show. This question comes from our good listener, Gideon Spiegelmeyer. Now, Gideon says he's a big fan of you, Tony. He says he loves the podcast and he loves all of our guests. But his question is about Ben Roethlisberger and sort of into what we were just talking about. He says, my question is, I keep hearing this narrative that Ben is washed up. I don't have the stats in front of me, but I think he's somewhere around 30 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. And so is Justin Herbert, who is considered the best rookie from last year with the same exact stats. Why do we see so much hate on Ben? They have the same stats, and Ben was an 11-0 at one point. I would love to hear your take on it. I would also love to hear Tony's take. Thanks so much. So, Gideon, we got your question on the air. Tony, to be exact here, he's not wrong. Justin Herbert threw 31 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. Ben Roethlisberger threw 33 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. Justin Herbert was also 6-9 as a starter compared to Ben Roethlisberger being 12-3. Their completion numbers are eerily similar, with Herbert completing 396 of 595, Ben completing 399 of 608, and Herbert threw about 500 more yards. So he threw more balls down the field. He also ran for 5 more touchdowns, which Ben didn't run for any because he ain't doing that.
But because he's like 47, okay?
Yeah, exactly. We get it. He's not doing that. But Gideon's right. This narrative that he's washed up and can't do it anymore, I don't see that. Is he the youthful prime quarterback anymore? No, we know he's not. But no one's asking him to be that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I promised myself before we started this segment, Chris, I'm not going to go full Tony the hater in this one because
there's a Tony the hater stance in here?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, listen, I made Tony the hater. Remember, Tony the hater was made on downplaying Ben Roethlisberger's accomplishments. Yeah. Well, and really, really upselling my boy Matthew Ryan, but we won't go there.
Gotta clarify before we continue. Is he right now better than Ben Roethlisberger?
Matt Ryan?
Yes.
I would say they're the same. You could interchange them at this point.
Miss Yay, come get him.
I mean, because here's the problem I'm gonna go full Tony the hater. Here's the problem I have, because I see this, I saw this, right? Justin Herbert and Ben Roethlisberger's stats put side by side, right? And sure, if you in a vacuum, you go, yeah, they had the same year, but that's removing all context from the situation. Ben Roethlisberger had a terrific first half of the season. We were all blown away by what Ben was doing for about 8 or 9 weeks there. But those last 8 or 9 weeks, we all want to just forget, right? Whereas Justin Herbert came in, rookie, no expectation. Tyrod Taylor is supposed to be the starter. He came in, and the fact that he threw 33 touchdowns, only 10 interceptions as a rookie, right? Everyone looks at that and goes, whoa, True. Holy cow. You can't believe it. So I guess my thing here is, Ben Roethlisberger down the stretch, the last 8 games, okay? Take his splits for just the last 8 games, because look, he had 4 interceptions through 9 games last year. Those the last games he had 10 interceptions.
He threw 4 interceptions in his last game.
Right. I mean, it was kind of a downward spiral, right? Do we want to relive the first half of that Cincinnati game, right, where I believe he had, what was it, negative passing yards? Yeah. Or maybe that was the Baltimore game. Either one. I mean, it was the awful performances from Ben, and it's not all on him, right? We do have to bring up here the fact that the Steelers had no running game last year. I mean, they couldn't convert a single yard, right? So forget about any sort of consistency there. But I do think we have to remember that Ben Roethlisberger down the stretch played very poorly, and we want to remember the good times, but down the stretch there was one good time, and that was the second half against Indianapolis, because even the first half of that game looked more like the back half of the season than it did the front half.
No, you're right. I think there was definitely a lot of scary moments, and I was even sort of playing it up, when he struggled against the Ravens, I was like, not a big deal. When they lost to Washington, I was like, not a big deal. When they lost to the Bills, I was like, okay, maybe, but I'm not too worried. When they lost to the Bengals, I was like, red alert, let's get this. It's a problem.
Right.
And certainly that's a concern. But again, and I said this before, the Steelers needed to maintain that ground game because Ben can be great in spots. He is not a beginning of the game to end of the game, dissects you every week type of guy. He's not Tom Brady who rips your heart out and stomps on it with every little dissecting pass. Now Ben can do that on occasion, but we know that you need to kind of limit the amount of times that he has to do that. And like, that's why it worked great against Baltimore the first time. It worked great against Tennessee the first time. But as we saw the season continue, teams started to pick up on what tendencies he developed, and he didn't know how to switch the gear back between throwing deep, throwing short, and finding the balance in the offense that they maintained so well early on. I think that, to Gideon's point,
right,
if you give Ben a balanced offense, he makes it work. But to your point, Justin Herbert had nothing with balance. I mean, that the Chargers, they just lost their coach. They were in a rough spot. I'm sure he had Keenan Allen, but I think Mike Williams was hurt all year. Their running game was in flux. He was on a losing team. So you do have a good point there. But I think, to Gideon's overall point, saying that Ben is washed up, I think is a complete stretch. Does he have limitations that weren't there before? Yes. But that does not make you washed up. Washed up is Joe Flacco right now.
Yeah, exactly. Ben Roethlisberger is a starting quarterback in the National Football League, and I think we'll continue to prove that, throughout this upcoming season. Now, is he a guy who you can win with? If he's your only option offensively, if you have to throw the ball 50 times a game because, handing the ball off is just, is a lost cause. I think we saw at the end of last season, no, right? He is not that guy, but there are very few of those players. I don't even know that I would, Justin Herbert, kind of looks like he might be that player for one season. But Ben is no longer that guy. So yeah, I think you're right. If you put in the calculus for the Steelers this year is you have to put him behind a more balanced offense, a better offensive line that can give him more time, and a running game that can take some of the pressure off of Ben Roethlisberger when it's in those situations where it's, hey, we got to have a drive here. Maybe we can run the ball a little bit, or a little flare out to the running back, easier throws for Ben, so that it's not all just on his shoulders to run everything and, draw it up in the dirt, as he said after that Baltimore game.
And again, that's why I keep emphasizing getting a running back early, because it's not just enough to get your offensive line strong. But Ben needs to be able to feel, I'm handling it off to a monster. I'm handing it off to a guy who can go 0 to 60 real quick and get and deal with people in his path, and also feel comfortable for me to, like you said, dump it down in the passing game to get easy yards and big plays. When again, I will continue to say this until it changes. The last time this team won playoff games was when they had Le'Veon Bell, running the ball and catching out the backfield. I think it would behoove them to make sure that they get a Najee Harris, a Travis Etienne, or a Javonte Williams to help Ben avoid that back end stretch. And here's the thing, Tony. Imagine last year if they had a Najee Harris. Imagine if last year they had a running back who balanced it, and they were like, even if they just ranked 16th in the running, just like dead in the middle of the league. Ben, I guarantee you, Ben wouldn't have had that fall off at the end of the year. No,
even if they were better in short yardage, their inability in second and 1, third and 1 type situations, it is a travesty, because again, it did squander what was very good talent defensively. And a Ben Roethlisberger beginning half of the season that was tremendous. And coming off of the elbow surgery, no one saw that coming, that he was going to light it up as much as he did early on. So yeah, I'm with you. I think even just fixing the short yardage stuff, it would be a huge benefit to this offense. And I think, any sort of consistency on the level of Le'Veon Bell, my goodness. That's what the Steelers need, because I think they're going to see a drop off somewhat defensively. So they're going to need that offense to be a lot better.
Absolutely. Great question, Gideon. Thanks so much for your contribution to the topic bag. Remember, if you want your question on the topic bag here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, be sure to send an email to LOSteelersTopicBag@gmail.com, and we'll be sure to get your question on there. We're going to take one more quick break. When we come back, we got one more topic we want to hit off with Tony. I'll talk about that right after this. You need a snack that's going to both help you get through the rest of your day, but also be good for you. That's where Built Bar comes in. Built Bar is the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. They have 18 amazing flavors, including 6 of their newest ones, being caramel brownie, cookies and cream, cherry barcia, lemon almond cheesecake, carrot cake, and apple almond crisp. There's so much to enjoy, and also don't forget, they help you lose and maintain weight. They're low calorie, low sugar, high protein, high fiber, and great for anyone that's currently on a keto diet. Right now, Built Bar has a special promo code for you to get a great deal on their website. Go to BuiltBar.com and use the promo code LOCKEDON15 to get 15% off your next order. Again, that's LOCKEDON15, LOCKED15, and you'll get 15% off your next order at BuiltBar.com.
Support for this podcast comes from Invent Together. According to studies, less than 13% of all inventors who hold a U.S. patent are women. Black and Hispanic college graduates patent at half the rate of their white counterparts. But we can fix that by increasing participation in innovation and patenting by underrepresented groups. It would quadruple the number of American inventors and increase annual GDP by almost $1 trillion. Invent Together is a coalition of organizations, companies, universities, and concerned citizens committed to ensuring that everyone has the opportunity to invent and patent. Because the more diverse the American patent system gets, the stronger and more successful our nation will become. What can you do to help diverse inventors patent and unleash economic opportunity? Find out at inventtogether.org. Learn more and take action today.
Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter, here with Tony Serino for a Tony Friday. Now, Tony, let's get into this next topic. I wanted to talk to you about free agent running backs because the Bengals recently released this week Giovanni Bernard.
Yeah.
Which was very weird to me because that man has been nothing but loyal to that organization, despite them bringing in Joe Mixon and bumping him back even when he played well. He's been lit up for them for years. He stuck by them even while they've lost. And now he's a 30-year-old running back in free agency with a lot of other running backs that are trying to get some work right now. My question to you, Tony, is of this pack of running backs, because the Steelers did sign Kalen Ballage already. Mm-hmm. He's on the roster, but I could still see the Steelers going and getting one person who's out on the market right now after the NFL draft is over. If they say, look, we got our star running back in the draft, but we still want another vet to come in and push people in training camp.
Yeah.
Who do you like that's out there and on the board right now? And is Giovanni Bernard one of those guys?
Well, obviously, Le'Veon's still out there. So, we're going to leave him out of this conversation because I don't want to derail, even though that's what I do.
You've been screaming Le'Veon for quite some time. Dean yelled at you like a month and a half ago about you saying, go get Le'Veon. And here we are, and he's still available.
Still available. He's ready. I mean, listen, do you think the Steelers would have converted on 3rd and 1 if they had Le'Veon? Come on, of course. And unless they ran a pitch play, unless Todd Haley.
Unless we ran a pitch.
Yeah, he ran the pitch. Shades of Jacksonville. Are there free agent? Look, the Ballage signing is an interesting one. I think he seems like Benny Snell competition, short yardage type back. I don't know. I can't imagine he's going to be the starter day one. So I could see someone like a Gio Bernard being brought in as like a Jalen Samuels competition type. Kind of a out of the backfield type, change of pace, maybe even Anthony McFarland type. Although Bernard is 30 now, so you have to wonder what is how are his legs at this point? He's not going to have the burst or the speed that he did in his early 20s. The other guys that are out there, the problem, Chris, is it's either a guy like Gio Bernard who's like 30 years old, or it's younger guys, but they all have their knees are shot, right? Todd Gurley's still available. So
crazy. If you had told me, a few years ago that Todd Gurley would just be bouncing around the NFL doing nothing, I'd have been like, man, that would be a sad drop off. But again, that was what people said, even when he was coming out of Georgia.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. And then you have, Adrian Peterson still out there. You have Frank Gore, Frank Gore still out there, still can play. 38, 39 years old.
Sir, I'm disappointed that you haven't said James Conner's name yet.
Well, it does feel like doesn't it feel like that the Ballage signing was all right. That's the end of
I know, I do agree with that.
Yeah. Feels like that's kind of the end. As a player who's available who I liked in college, he never made it anywhere. In fact, I think he's played on like 3 different teams now. But Deonta Foreman remember him from Texas?
Yeah.
He's available. I like him. I think he's only like 26, so he's still young. Actually, he's 25. So if you wanted a guy, again, kick the tires on a guy. Also, Duke Johnson available, another player you could just kick the tires on him. Cheap running back to bring in if you're going to go by committee this year. And I think the case here, Chris, would be, you talked about like, even if you get an Etienne or if you get a Najee Harris, if they don't, I think they definitely, if this is someone who they get like a Kylan Hill later in the draft, I think they are going to have to get another veteran. And those are guys who I could see coming in. And again, if you're going to do a whole running back by committee, I could see a Deonta Foreman fitting into that committee alongside a McFarland and alongside a Benny Snell or a Kalen Ballage.
No, I agree. I think that's very reasonable signings there. Another thing to consider here, and I know this sounds kind of ridiculous, but Adrian Peterson is 36 years old, and he's coming off his season with the Lions, and he still looks athletically capable to play running back. It's just that you're Adrian Peterson. We don't want to have to bank on you. Right. But interestingly enough, when I was talking about Najee Harris's interview on the Adam Schefter podcast earlier this week, he did mention his favorite running back is Adrian Peterson. And he said the one thing that he wants is to just get a signed jersey from him sometime.
There you go.
Now,
how about a signed Steeler jersey?
That's what I'm saying. Because he said, like, I wouldn't do no jersey swaps unless it was Adrian Peterson. Now imagine. Now it's the NFL doesn't work like recruiting in college, so like you can't get Najee Harris to pick the Steelers. But imagine you're like, hey man, like just stick with it. Just come chill with AP and be happy about it. That'd be a kind of a cool time. Maybe he pulls the Eli Manning and says, I refuse to sign with anyone who's not the Pittsburgh Steelers. Not that would ever happen. I'm being completely facetious there, but. The idea of you get the old man to come in and maybe talk to Najee Harris and although again AP's been kind of weird at times, he gets kind of aggressive in his own way. In the locker room, like his stare down contests he had with Sean Payton. The Steelers may feel like let's groom Najee Harris ourselves. But still, again, him, TJ Yeldon. There's guys out there who you could put in the backfield and just say, hey, just come and work. And if you beat out Benny Snell or Jalen Samuels and Anthony McFarland, you're going to get playing time, and Kalen Ballage as well, I guess.
Yeah. It would be fun. Although, like you said, AP with his he gets weird about the playing time, and certainly I don't think he wouldn't get a ton in Pittsburgh, if any. I mean, it's been a workhorse type system. Going back to Connor, are you surprised? Because a lot of running backs have been signed to this point, but he's still available. Are you surprised by that? Because when you look at kind of the young running backs that are available, he's the one where you're like, all right, he's young, he's had some injury history, but not the kind of injury history that a guy like Todd Gurley has had, which is keeping him away. You surprised Connor hasn't been signed yet?
No, I'm actually kind of not surprised because James Conner in the NFL hasn't had the season-ending injury in week 1 yet, but he has had several injuries, and anyone who knows James Conner knows that he already had a tough ACL injury and cancer that he beat when he was in college. So,
true, yeah.
Combining that with the fact that he's never played a complete season in the NFL because he keeps getting hurt at some point during one, I'm sure there's a lot of teams out there like, you know what? I can get a guy that's a decent runner who can catch out the backfield and block a little bit in the draft. I could get a guy that could sort of fill this role. And so I'm not going to pay a 26-year-old running back to figure that out, which sucks. It sucks for James Conner because he's a great effort dude. He fights for every play. He doesn't give up on you. And I think he's a heck of a dude there, but it's the harsh reality of the running back position is that you can be very sound in a lot of your technique and what you do, but if you're not explosive, people are just like, give me the next guy.
Yeah, I'm with you. And this is a running back class that's very top heavy. The fall off after those top three is pretty significant. So if you're a team like the Steelers, and there are other teams like this who are going into the draft thinking we have to get a starter out of this, and you don't, I think that's where the running back market's going to heat up again after the draft is free agency. I think you'll see some of these guys get picked up, especially Gio Bernard is in that, teams who didn't get their guy in the draft now have to start to put together a committee. I think edge is another position like that in the draft where you have Clowney still unsigned. And this is an edge class that's very top heavy. And it's not a great class whatsoever, but the teams who don't get their edge guy in the draft, I think are going to kind of have to fall back on a guy like Clowney.
I agree. I think that's something that Melvin Ingram is still out there. Ryan Kerrigan, Olivier Vernon. There's a lot of interesting names out there from years past where we've been like, whoa, that guy's tough to beat. So certainly something to consider there, and especially at the running back position, definitely. So we'll keep an eye on that for you here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Any updates? Who knows? Maybe the Steelers will be dipping back into free agency to get a running back after the draft. But I guarantee you this: they'll be dipping back in for someone after the draft. They still got like $12 million in cap space or something like that.
Yeah,
they're not done signing people. They just
do something, Kevin Colbert. Do something. Do something. But no, it's May 3rd. I mean, May 3rd is the day, right? May 3rd is the day that free agent signings no longer count against your. I think it's May 3rd. They no longer count against your compensatory formula. So that's what the Steelers are waiting for.
Yeah. And they know that they can get good compensatory picks from, especially Bud Dupree, who signed a major contract in free agency. So
I think it was the biggest one so far still.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, that's definitely a third round comp pick coming their way next year, which again, I think they're going to use to trade up and maybe get a quarterback next year. But that's a whole nother story. Tony, my man, thanks so much for coming on the show. We love having you on. Normally we get you on Tuesdays. We got you on Friday, but hey, we'll get you next Tuesday, right?
Absolutely. I'll be back here Tuesday. If everything goes well with this stupid eye, I'll be back.
But Tony, thanks again for coming on. Please let people know they can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Steeler Country. You can find me on YouTube. I do a roundtable show called AFC North Talk. It's all about the AFC North. I represent the Steelers on that show, so check that out on YouTube. It's called AFC North Talk. You can also find my YouTube channel, Steeler Country with Tony Serino. Hope I have a video out this weekend recapping some of the news over the week, and I'm going to start doing some draft previews on there as well, so check that out.
As always, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram and now TikTok, because I have a TikTok. I figured I got to get.
You're a TikTok star now?
Yeah. I'm not a star. I'm just a viewer. I don't have any TikToks up yet.
You got to start doing some TikToks.
Maybe we will. Maybe that'll be the new betting system, is I have to put something on TikTok that I lose a bet in Locked On Steelers. We'll consider that down the line. But you can follow me at Carter Critiques on all those platforms. You can read my work at dkpittsburghsports.com, where I cover the Steelers, Pitt football, and Pitt basketball. And I also host the Friday episode of Locked On NFL. Go listen to that. I've recorded that with Q, so that's up there right now on Locked On NFL for our more national show. And if you're enjoying the Locked On Steelers podcast, remember you can subscribe to us Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, radio.com, which is now Odyssey. So get us all the way there and rate us 5 stars with a positive comment. When you do that, it really helps out the show. And if you do both, you get a shout out at the end of the show, like this person who's Venom King 666. Hey man, it's a dangerous name there, buddy. But you gave us a 5-star review, so we give you a shout out. It says, Mighty Steelers, great show, Chris, and congratulations to Jenna. Look forward to hearing your show on my way to work every morning. Tell Dean to stop being mean to Josh. Keep up the great work. Thank you. Thank you very much, Venom King. Appreciate you very much there. Also, shout out to one of our listeners, Mike Hines. There's a lot of you guys that tell great stories about how we help you get through your day. And there's more that I will always share on this podcast platform. But Mike, we appreciate you, and some of the things that you say in the Facebook group. So shout out to you, and shout out to everyone who's in that Facebook group, 1,400 strong, free to join. Just search Locked On Steelers, ask to join it. You'll be part of it. Thanks again to Tony for being on. We'll be back in the ears on Monday. We're running out of mock draft Mondays to do, so get your picks in. The post will be up in the Facebook group for you to add your mock draft, so you can get your chance to get your picks on the show. See you then.